For 70 years, from the late 1800s all the way to 1947, a massive movement for freedom was brewing across India. This is the incredible story of how millions of people from literally every walk of life came together to challenge the most powerful empire on earth and win.
So you have to wonder, how does that even happen? How do you go from just scattered feelings of discontent in the late 19th century to a powerful, organized all-India struggle for self-rule? Well, let's dig into the fundamental question that really got the ball rolling.
All right, so picture this. It's the late 1800s. British control is getting tighter and tighter, and people all across India start to think about their country in a whole new way. They're starting to ask some really big questions about who they are and what their future should look like.
And the answer they landed on, well, it was a game changer. It was this simple, powerful idea. India was for the people of India, not for some foreign power. That single realization, that the country and all its resources belong to its own people, was the spark that lit the fire of a modern national consciousness.
Now, this growing awareness wasn't just happening in a vacuum. It was being fueled by a series of increasingly harsh British laws. You had the Arms Act, which basically said Indians couldn't own weapons. Then the Vernacular Press Act, which tried to silence any newspapers that were critical of the government. But the Ilbert Bill controversy, that was really the last straw. When the British pulled a bill that would have allowed Indian judges to preside over cases involving Europeans, it just laid bare the deep-seated racism of the empire. It became crystal clear that a unified, all-India organization was desperately needed.
And so, in 1885, the Indian National Congress was formed. This was the beginning of an organized political movement, one that would change dramatically over the next 60 years, leading the country through huge waves of protest, mobilization, and ultimately to freedom.
In its early days, the Congress was, let's say, pretty cautious. But as the 20th century kicked off, a new, much more assertive group of leaders emerged. And they started questioning the methods of the old guard, demanding a more radical path to freedom. And this is where you can really see the split in thinking. On one side, you have the moderates. They believed in writing petitions and making speeches, trusting that the British sense of justice would eventually win out. But the radicals, they called this the politics of prayers. They said, no way. Freedom isn't something you ask for. It's something you have to win through self-reliance, mass action, and a total boycott of British goods and institutions.
And this powerful line from Bal Gangadhar Tilak? Wow! It just perfectly captures that new, defiant spirit. The goal wasn't just about getting a bigger say in the government anymore. The goal was Swaraj, complete self-rule. And the radicals were clear. People had to fight for it, relying only on their own strength.
Okay, so after 1919, everything changes. The entire struggle gets a massive shakeup. A new leader comes onto the scene, someone who would turn the nationalist movement into a true mass movement, getting millions of ordinary people involved in a way nobody had ever seen before. And that leader was, of course, Mahatma Gandhi. He came back to India already a well-respected figure, known for his nonviolent campaigns against racial discrimination in South Africa, and he brought with him a revolutionary new philosophy of resistance that would completely redefine the freedom struggle. That philosophy was Satyagraha. And it's really important to get this right. This wasn't passive resistance. It was an active, moral struggle based on truth and nonviolence, and a willingness to endure suffering for a just cause. This incredibly powerful idea became the foundation for the nationwide non-cooperation movement, and people put this idea into action in a huge way between 1920 and 1922. The entire country was swept up in this wave of non-cooperation, a movement that absolutely everyone could join. By giving up British titles, boycotting schools and courts, and lighting these huge public bonfires of foreign cloth, thousands of ordinary Indians were directly challenging the authority of the British Raj, hitting them where it hurt, both symbolically and economically. By 1930, this philosophy led to one of the most iconic moments of the entire struggle. You see, the British had a monopoly on salt, a tax that affected everyone, rich or poor. So by marching 240 miles to the sea just to make his own salt, Gandhi turned a simple act of defiance into a powerful nationwide symbol of the demand for freedom. Okay, so now the world is in the middle of World War II, and in this moment of global chaos, Gandhi saw an opportunity. He felt the time was right for one last decisive push, and he decided to launch a new phase of the movement with a clear ultimatum to the British.
His message couldn't have been clearer. To the British, he said, "Quit India." And to the people of India, his call to action was, do or die. It was an urgent plea for a final, nonviolent struggle to achieve independence right then and there.
So how did the British react? Well, they came down hard. Really hard. Just look at these numbers. Over 90,000 people were arrested by the end of 1943. Over 1,000 were killed in police firing. But you know what? It didn't work. The sheer scale of the Quit India movement, with peasants and students rising up all over the country, proved that British rule was on its last legs. The rebellion had basically brought the empire to its knees.
So, the war ends, and it's finally time to talk about Indian independence. But the path forward wasn't going to be simple. Not at all. There was this deep, growing political divide that had been festering for the past decade, and it was about to complicate everything.
This is where the All India Muslim League really comes into focus. They started to push a new idea, arguing that Muslims weren't just a minority in India, they were a separate nation entirely. They were afraid that in a Hindu-majority India, they'd be politically steamrolled and their voices would never be heard. So they started to campaign for an autonomous state of their own.
And if you had any doubt about how deep this divide was, the 1946 provincial elections made it crystal clear. Just look at this breakdown. The Congress did great in the general constituencies, but in the seats that were specifically reserved for Muslims, the Muslim League won a spectacular victory. This result gave a massive boost to their claim to be the one true voice for India's Muslims, making their demand for a separate nation, Pakistan, seem almost inevitable. So when the talks between the Congress and the League just fell apart, the British announced that the country would be partitioned. Independence, this moment of incredible joy that people had fought for so long, came in August 1947. But it was born alongside a new nation, Pakistan. And this division led to unimaginable violence and one of the largest, most tragic migrations in all of human history.
And so, at the end of the day, after this long 70-year struggle, they did it. The Indian people won their independence. But it was a victory that came with a terrible, terrible price. A triumph that will forever be scarred by the profound tragedy of partition. And it leaves us with a heavy question, a question that still echoes today. Independence was won, for sure, but at what cost?